All right. Hello out there and welcome to Deep Cut Cheese Podcast. I think this is episode 5 and we want to welcome back all our long-term listeners. I think we probably have about 12 views on YouTube at this point, but we're making it for the fans. We're making it for you, Brooke Fremo. And so it's been a week and a couple days cuz I punked out yesterday and my knee was hurting, so I asked Kyle if we could wait one day. And he said yes. So Kyle, catch me up. What you been up to?
First of all, didn't know Brooke Fremo was still a listener. Shout out. Appreciate you being our long-term listener. I thought you quit after that told the story about the dog ear. Apologies, by the way.
She hasn't commented since. So
Yeah, I know that was rough. Let's see. I had a great week. Sailed this past weekend. Took the Ojedas out and caught some wind. Had some champagne and some charcuterie on the sailboat. So it's fancy when you have a charcuterie on a sailboat. So it was a lot of good times. And let's see, still watching The Last Kingdom, Till Valhalla,
Till Valhalla.
and rocking it, living the dream.
How's work?
It's the worst, but again, not my passion. But good people, falling in with a good crowd, and everybody's super supportive. Much like, let's see, the company that you go to see in New York, Next Jump.
Yeah.
They have this like specific culture that they try to instill in everybody. And that's they have a test before you can even get an interview about your personality. So it's interesting. It is what it is. Living the dream.
Oh, good. Good. I mean, that's cool. At least they're trying with culture. A lot of companies aren't even trying, so that's good. That's good. I mean, it really matters. The who matters. The longer I do this, the more I know that the who matters, and so it's good that they're screening for sure. So let's see what's going on in my life. My family's actually out right now, looking at Texas A&M Corpus Christi because I think that's where Josh was going to go for his first year until he gets onto campus at A&M. But he was down there next to the ocean. And he's like, "Why would I want to go to College Station?" I was like, "Fair enough."
I don't know.
College Station is kind of in the middle of nowhere, but I was trying to explain to him like going to a place like A&M, these big schools, big traditions, like Corpus Christi. That's transactional. I go there, I do my schooling, I get my degree, I move on. Going to College Station is transformational. Like all of a sudden you're putting your kids in A&M onesies for their it like changes
Forever.
Yeah, it changes. Like I don't see I think the Corpus Christi is the Islanders. I don't see a lot of those flags flying high in
I feel like they missed the mark by not being like the deadly seahorses or something down there. Islanders.
But the school is on an island, so it's pretty
Yeah.
dope that way. Like, I mean, literally, the school's the only thing out there on that spit, and so it's on its own little island. And he's excited. We're kind of ready for him to launch, and it's interesting because me and Joyce were talking about this today, and we're like, we're gonna try to do a gradual launch for him, not kind of like what we had, like. I don't know how you're. Well, you joined the Air Force too, so but you did go to college for about 8 minutes, but you got to go back to lesson or session 1 if you want to hear that story, podcast listeners. But like as soon as I turned 17, graduated high school, my dad's like, "All right, you're out." Like there's no gradual launch, right? Like you're cut off. Pay for your own stuff now, all of it. And I'm not saying my dad did all that. Like he helped me out a little bit, but I was on my own, right? Like there was no glide path for sure. And so we were talking to Joshua about that because not too long ago, I don't know what happened, but I was paying for Spotify for him. Like kids can just click on things now and like download them, and I'm paying for it somehow. And I'm like, "Son, do you like your Spotify account?" He's like, "Yeah." It was like $9 a month or something like that. I'm like, "Well, if you like it that much, I'm going to quit paying for it and you can pay for it." He's like, "Man, I don't like it that much." And that right there is the lesson of growing up, right? Like you start making trade-offs. Like, do I really like it that much? If someone else is paying for it, I like it. If I have to pay for it, maybe not as much. So that's where Joyce and the kids are at actually right now, doing that. Other than that, I hurt my knee at Orange Theory, hashtag Hills. So I haven't been attacking the the Orange Theory as much this week for sure. But yeah, it's been a good week. I learned a lot of stuff this week, so maybe we'll get into that a little later. So what I think we're gonna do, I'm talking a lot here, but I want to pass it over to you. Is we were talking earlier about assignments, and so I think we'll kick off this podcast by going into. Let's start with our best assignments. Like, what was your best Air Force assignment, Kyle, or a couple of them?
Right. So best goes in a lot of different ways, like best
Sure, sure, sure.
location, best for the people that you worked with, best for the actual work that was out there. I feel like for me, the best assignment that I ever had from a location standpoint was in Misawa, Japan. So way up north in Misawa, Japan, I lived off base. I lived in a Japanese neighborhood. I had fantastic Japanese neighbors, one of whom was an air traffic controller, and so they speak English for as part of their job because you have to when you give air traffic directions, you have to give those in English. So it was pretty awesome to have my a built-in translator in that neighborhood, and it was just
That is cool.
really cool four seasons. It's kind of a they call it like a West Virginia landscape, lots of hills, beautiful trees, lakes, rivers. We had the ocean right next to us as well, so we could literally surf. We could go snowboarding. I got really into snowboarding there, so I snowboarded all the time.
Yeah, I
And
think everyone comes back from a south with a snowboard.
oh yeah, for sure, I still have my own garage. Um, it's epic.
It gets
Let's see.
big too, right? Like we're not talking about like little 3 feet of snow. Like I've seen
Oh no.
pictures.
Oh yeah, so Snowmageddon in Kunsan had nothing on the just your Thursday, your average Thursday in Masawa. I can remember in Masawa for sure that it being knee deep snow most of the time, unless you got kind of a warm snap where you had some rain that kind of knocked the snow back. But the worst thing about all that snow was lost tools. So if you were ever if you've ever been a maintainer, if you've ever had to have inventory over something, and you had one of your airmen drop a socket into a snowbank, and you have to find all your tools before you go home, you definitely are not stoked with that young person. It's like fine, and you bring heaters over, and you're melting snow, and you have magnets. But man, I can't tell you how much of my life was wasted looking for a scribe and you know dig deep snow out there. It's just ridiculous.
Oh, that's terrible. Yeah, the bane of existence. At least it wasn't the garbage.
Oh yeah.
I've definitely gone dumpster diving looking for some sockets. So what
Yes.
else? What else about Masala? So you like the people? Was the
Yeah, I love the
mission or like what job? What did you do there?
so we were the world famous wild weasels.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
and let's
The
see. So we had a
crazies.
cool mission. Yeah. So they kind of if you've never heard of who the wild weasels are in the Air Force, there's two kind of famous bases that do that mission. Shaw does it. They have a Block 50 F-16s where they do wild weasels, and Masawa does it, and they actually have it on their tail flash WW. And let's see. And so what we do is our pilots will go in low and fast over a base, and they'll draw surface to air missile fire. And then when they turn those machines on, those missile launchers on, our airplane, can get a lock and shoot a missile and kind of circle back around and smoke all those turkeys. And it just makes the air a little safer. Hashtag air superiority. And just makes it right. I bet Ukraine, Daddy Putin, wishing he could pull down that air superiority. But
You
I
can't.
bet they're begging for that over there right now. But
He's losing to drones right now.
I know it's ridiculous.
We
But
better be
super.
careful. We'll get shut down by some hackers.
I know, hey, super cool mission, great people. Um, I was an expediter and I was a tech sergeant, and I think I spoke on this podcast where what a magical rank tech is. I wish I would have enjoyed it a little bit longer. And
Maybe for
yeah,
our if we have for the Brook Fremos out there,
mm.
explain what tech sergeant, like what that actually means, maybe in terms that they could understand.
All right. So tech sergeant is really kind of your first foray for most people out of just doing leading small little groups. So when you're a staff sergeant, you might have two or three or four guys, and you might do something. But when you're a tech, an E6, you have five little stripes, five little big stripes. What you do is, as an expediter, is you have a shift of guys that you kind of manage and lead, and at a very fun level, and you kind of like you take the priorities from your superiors, and you ensure that your group of people, your 30 guys or your 13 guys or your three guys, whatever happens to be based on appointments, what those guys do over the course of the day. And it's super cool. You get to drive a bread truck, and in
If
Masawa,
you're a
in the tech,
maintainer, yeah.
in Masawa, in the wintertime when there's ice everywhere, you can do donuts in bread trucks, and get yelled at by your chief. That's happened to me. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So the way I describe tech sergeant is that like staff sergeant's still a little bit running around in that individual contributor realm. Like
Mm,
still got. I mean, you got a few people that you ride on that are direct reports for you. You might not ever actually see them because they're on different shifts and everything like that. But there's still a lot expected of you as an individual contributor, especially in the maintainer realm. Is that's usually the first time you're holding X's, red
mm,
X, so that you can sign off an aircraft is worthy to fly. And so you're catching a lot of red X's. At least I did as a staff sergeant. And the one thing I don't want to miss what you went over with that wild weasel mission. There's another word that people use to describe that. The first thing they are is bait. They
mm.
fly in as bait for the missiles to lock onto them. Then they try to shoot them before they shoot before they get hit. So they're bait. I listened to a pilot describe it one time, and it made me laugh because who was the crazy that thought of this mission?
Yeah, if we ever do guess, we should have a wild weasel pilot on, because he would be like, "We dropped in and whoopah." It was like we were upside down and inverted and like whoopah, and like we were pitted, bro. You know what I'm saying? They all talk like that, just in case you didn't know.
Oh yeah. So Masawa is. Um, I've heard great things about it. I've actually never been there. I had a friend that was stationed there for a while. He loved it. Fell in love with the Asian, the Japanese culture and sushi for sure. And
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
ramen, just all their food, delicious, delicious. What else? So that was
so
one of your favorites.
definitely culturally, location wise, it was 100% Misawa. I lived there for 5 years. Um, my son was born there, so it holds a special place in our hearts. The sushi was amazing. We lived right on the ocean. We had great sushi, great winter sports, great summer sports with the surfing and the hiking, and it was just that's kind of where I got into hiking.
Oh, really? I
Yeah,
didn't know
so and
that.
there's just so much stuff to do there. It was absolutely 100% very cool.
It's more rural though, right? Like it's not like the
Super
Tokyo and
rural. Oh
yeah.
yeah,
So
it's not. It's a 3-hour bullet train ride from Tokyo to Hachinohe, and then it's a 30-minute like beater train ride from Hatch to Masawa, and then there's no Ubers. You catch a ride from a cabbie or from like some random American who happens to be at the station, and he'll take you to your house.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What else? Best
Let's see.
assignments.
Best assignments. So best assignment. I'll hold the Azores near and dear to my heart, because that's where I learned to sail, and I learned like an appreciation for the ocean. So that place is very kind of cool to me. Small rock in the middle of the Atlantic. Best people assignment,
Well,
100%
you were there.
hands
You were
down.
at the Azores though for 9/11, right?
That's where I was at on 9/11.
Tell us.
That's some actually,
Yeah, tell us that little story. I remember that was a hiking story that you shared with me one time.
yeah. So I was at the gym, and that was like in the very beginning of cardio theaters for the Air Force. So we had one. We had, I would say, 4 or 5 TVs at the gym. I was on the elliptical cross trainer, hashtag I'm lazy, and I was breaking a sweat. And I noticed that in the front of the room, there were a bunch of people kind of surrounding a TV and kind of like looking up, and they had like the actual TV volume on. And it was one of the towers, and it was smoking. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. I was like, "Well, that's weird." And then I eventually turned because more and more people were gathering there. I the
Excuse me.
channel over, and then I heard that we think this may have been a terrorist attack. And about that time is when the second plane crashed into the other. My elliptical, I went straight to work, and that's where I was for like the next two. So I was supposed to PCS the next month. It was September. I was supposed to leave in October, and we worked around the clock. We the wives of the other people who worked there came into work, and they were cooking for us and for the air crews who were going across the Atlantic to, let's see, first Germany and then parts unknown into the Central Asia. So it was pretty crazy stuff. I You worked until you couldn't work, and
Yeah.
then you would take a nap on the couch, and you would go out and you would work some more, and you would help these crews. And
Basically, the Azores is a gas depot, right? For
yeah,
flying.
absolutely.
Yeah. So for
So
all
it's
those that
about,
don't know,
yeah, so it's a little rock. It's about 16 miles long ways by 8 miles in width, and just a really small little rock. And it's been used as a fuel depot since World War II.
mhm.
And so, actually, one of my grandfathers has been in the Azores, getting filling up his B-24 on his way to Europe when he was a bomber pilot.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
What?
it's crazy.
Yeah. What a neat connection.
Yeah, so just it was a cool assignment. Huge appreciation for the ocean. I'll never forget uh, that place, obviously, because 9/11, and no one kind of forgets that.
Yeah.
And where were you at? Got to know where were we at on 9/11?
Yeah, that's so good. I was my wife was running. I was at my house. My wife was running on the treadmill. I was doing sit-ups in front of it because I was in Phoenix at Luke, and it was earlier in the morning, right? Like so, it must have been like 5 or 6 in the morning. Um, and we were watching TV, and it came on there, showed that the first tower was hit, and Joyce immediately like, this is terrorist attack, and like no one else had said that, right? Like in my mind, I'm like, man, how does that happen, right? Like a plane was going down, and like terrorist attack was not, and we were sitting there watching it, and you know they had it live, right? Because it was smoking and everything like that, and then you see the next plane just dive right in there, and obviously at that point we knew it, you know Joyce's suspicions were confirmed. Her head grew a little bit bigger, and she's like, "See, I told you." And
Never shrank.
I was like, "And you're right. You're right. You should go work for the CIA." So I jumped in my car and drove to work. And by the time I got to work, it was an hour and a half to get onto the base. So they immediately locked down, and they were checking, the cars for every single little thing. And so Luke Air Force Base is a F-16. Well, at that time was an F-16 training base. So it wasn't like it didn't affect the mission there for the maintainers very much. Just trying to pump out more pilots, right? So, but as far as like CE and security forces and all those kind of players, they definitely change, right? And I just, for all you young heads out there that didn't really know before 9/11, like, you remember driving on base with a sticker? We're getting deep cut now, right? Yep, deep cut. So for all you young heads out there, we'd have a sticker on our windshield, and the gate guard would just wave you right through. Didn't matter, like, didn't stop you, didn't check your ID, didn't do anything. If you had a sticker on your car, you drove through. The big thing back then was, hey, airman, if you're going to sell your car, take your sticker off, so we don't
Oh yeah, for
accidentally
sure.
let someone on the base.
Or if you were a security forces person and there was an officer insignia, it didn't matter who was in the car, because you better believe mama gonna get that salute when she rolls through with the kids going to the CDC.
That's right. And so the only way I could tell if there was an exercise going on base was they would stop you and check your ID sometimes. Like that's the only
Oh, that's
way,
nice.
like a ram. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was me on 9/11, and yeah, it's training base. So not super affected.
Yeah. And it's just so crazy to think back then about how like different it was. Like, do you remember, years past, we're chiefs, we're at Davis Monthan. Do you remember what the security forces at the front gate used to ask you because of your rank? Good afternoon,
Oh,
Chief.
are you talking about like if you wanted a post briefing
If you
or
want a post briefing, and are you are all secure?
oh,
Are
all
you all
secure?
secure?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I remember,
Oh, because then we didn't have to give all of the IDs up in the car. Is that what you're saying?
yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
are you all secure? Yeah, man. And I remember Baraza of all people, on his motorcycle. He would tell the story about how he was on the motorcycle, and the gate guard would be like, "Chief, are you all secure?" He'd be like, "Bro, it's just me on a motorcycle. Of course, I'm good." So
Oh
yeah,
man, you bought a Brazzo. We gotta hit on that a little bit.
yeah.
I wonder where he's at now.
I don't know. You better not tag him in this YouTube. We might stir some stuff.
Yeah, I for all you people that don't know, like Chief Barraza was this very charismatic, um, very charismatic a chief who a lot of people thought. I mean, his story was kind of amazing. Came out of gangs to join the Air Force, and just rose to the top enlisted rank, and then continued on up. He was the I I knew him for a little bit at the Senior NCO Academy before he left, but then when everything came crashing down, he was the 12th Air Force Command Chief. And I'll just briefly touch on it. I was sitting at the I was watching the trial, and he got tried for abuse of power. Um, you know, Forcing some relationships on um, some younger airmen. It was it was terrible, and yeah, he spent some time. He got convicted and spent some time in jail, and I mean, it was terrible what he did. The whole thing is terrible, right? Like the whole situation, because he had a. It was funny because like I'll always note it. This is just what's interesting is that like when a when a chief or someone of higher rank kind of gets called out like that, like a lot of haters come out on the Facebook pages and like I knew it. I knew Kyle was like that. I knew it, right? And I remember like his comments were like, "No way! Can't believe it! I just can't believe it!" Yeah.
Yeah, for
So
me specifically, I was a big Barraza believer. I was supposed it was so I'd made chief, and then got to DM, and so the new chiefs have to put on the chief induction for the following year for the
right.
next new crop of chiefs. So we get drafted to do it, and so the chiefs group were like, "Hey, Bake, why don't you go up to 12th Air Force and ask Barraza if he'll guest speak?" And so I made an appointment with his person. You had one. I don't know what they're called. What are they called?
Exec.
Or did that dude's exec, and she was really personable, fantastic tech sergeant. I'm sure she's doing great things now. But anyway, so I had scheduled 5 minutes on this man's calendar. I go in, I
A
sit
whopping five
down.
minutes. Huh.
Yeah, I go down, sit down. I'm a crew chief. And what that means is maybe I wasn't as sharp as I could have been. My uniform could have been a little, perhaps, crispier. My boots a little more suede. I don't know. But I sit down.
You had your laces out,
Yeah, my laces out.
just like your chief you talked about last time. Did
Hell yeah.
you have a
This
cig in?
dude. Do what?
Did you have a cigarette in?
Like big old fat dip right here. And hey, son, let me ask you something. But actually, so he looks at me and he's looking at me for a second, and he was like, you could really be somebody. And
What's that supposed to be?
I was like, Excuse me, Chief. What? I'm here asking you if you want to speak at the chief induction ceremony. He goes, yeah, absolutely, of course I do. He's like, but you could really be somebody. He's like, I haven't seen your records, but I'm sure they're stellar. And then he goes in like this entire just bizarre, wild path. And honestly, I came out of there having drank like a fifth of blue Kool-Aid, and I was fired up.
Fired up.
First thing I did was tuck in my shoelaces to my boots. I slicked my eyebrows back, and yeah, I straightened my crap out. I walked out of there, and I
Ready
think I
to
may
lead
talk.
airmen.
Yeah, I think I may have talked to you, but I was like, "Holy cow!" Or Greg. It could have been Greg Sanders.
Yeah, I wasn't
I was
there
like,
yet.
"Oh, yeah." I was like, "Holy cow!" I just got out of a meeting with Barraza, and he was like, "Oh yeah, how'd that go?" And I was like, "I gotta tell you, man, I'm ready to go to war." And he's just that guy. He was, like you said, super charismatic, and he just had a way with words that even someone as cynical and just jaded as me was just like, holy cow, I'm only drinking water. I'm never going to sin again. I am blue to the core. Let's do this. So yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't believe it. I couldn't believe the allegations. I was shocked.
yeah. It just goes to show you, like, I mean, we all have our demons. We all have the problems, and I really do. And this is just a side note. Um, I really do hope that leadership, as we move forward, like the leadership by example, um, it's a good model for a little bit. But the problem is that what happens when the leader's not having a good day or is messed up or anything like that? You kind of go into this lying, hiding, and faking mode, right? Like, I can never have a day off. I always have to be on. And don't get me wrong. I mean, like, there's definitely positions like that. But where do those people go? Like, we're all human. We all have issues. And so it's actually funny whenever I see a leader that, I think I might have talked about this, but like, once like Colonel Kennerson, once I knew their vice a little bit, like, they become real to me. And then I'm like, okay, we can work. I can trust you, right? Like, we can work together. When it's too over the top, I'm skeptical now um, because I know everyone's battling something, and it just sucks that
Yeah.
that's what he was battling, and it affected other people.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. The whole stitch was crazy. I did not go to the trial. I'm glad that you did. It was good to get that firsthand account of like what had occurred. But I would say for the people out there who listen and who have aspirations of that top enlisted rank, I feel like chiefs get themselves in trouble more than people actually realize. I
Yeah, for
was
sure.
I was lucky. I was chief for 3 years. I was hella busy, and I was talking about bringing it back to best assignments. I was there at Davis Monthan with the just greatest leadership group, and not just in our group, but it was a fantastic group of people, and everybody was real tight
Hmm.
and took care of each other. And they would call you out if you were having a bad day,
Yeah, that's the
or
best group. The ones that will call you out, right? Like, that
oh
know
yeah,
you're messy, and they're like,
yeah,
"Hey, man, you're stepping up. You're messing up a little bit here." And like, we all need that, right? We all need that. And the ones that don't get it, like, and I feel like they go down a deeper, darker hole. And it's it's like anything. Um, it's like AA, right? Like, you go to AA so you can prevent like stepping in the bar, right? Like, you don't go to AA because I went in a bar and now I need some help. What you try to do is you try to cut it off before you even get to that point, right? Like, and so what I mean by that is, like, try to catch you in the beginning of going down the wrong path instead of at the very end when foundationally, yeah, you're done. Like, you can't come back from those kind of bad decisions. So I love those groups. I had a conversation with someone about that, because psychological safety is a like a kind of a buzzword, and it was interesting because I was kind of using psychological safety in kind of an article I'm writing. It's talk about psychological safety culture. And this person kind of called me out, and he's like, yeah, too many people. He had spent time with Amy Edmondson, the person that coined psychological safety. And he's like, even she talks about this, that like psychological safety is about the who. It's really more about the person than it is about a culture, right? So, and it got me thinking. I'm like, yeah, I guess it is. It's about trust. Do I trust you to share my messy, unkept thoughts and just everything? And do you trust me? And if we do, then we can get into those messy, difficult discussions that actually lead to better outcomes. If not, then we play it safe and we keep it surface level, and we don't get to those kind of discussions. And we put band-aids on problems because we don't actually solve the problems, because we're not really enough to get to the messy core of usually these hard problems we have to solve. And then if you have a culture, all it means is that you have a team that trusts each other, and that's a really cool spot. Which will lead me into one of my best assignments. Was at the actual Senior NCO Academy when I taught there, and it's for that specific reason. I had a bunch of guys and girls that I worked with that, man, phenomenal, like type A, like go-getters, everything. But like the Senior NCO Academy just ran, and you didn't quite know how it always ran, but like people were going above and beyond, and it was phenomenal. But it was the people that I worked with. Like no one was above calling themselves out. Like, hey, I'm struggling with this. I can't figure this out. All these kind of things. And it was just such a refreshing environment. I grew more there than I grew in any assignment. And I think it's because, they have a kind of a learning organization, right? Like it's built to have a kind of growth mindset. What I like is that they take experts in maintenance and security forces and all this kind of stuff, and they drop them into this environment where they don't know exactly what's going on. And so they have to revert back to kind of like tech school airmen. Like, how do you do that? Like, what are you talking about? Like, you really have to get back into this learning mode. And it kind of continues with you for a while. I mean, the longer you get there, the less it affects you. But I really like that, because you can't fall back onto an ego. You can't fall back onto what I knew then. You really have to learn the new thing of the day, and it really it's always a battle against the ego. And so it's hard to go in there and have an ego, because I'll tell you, like, this is the way it works. You go to the Senior Institute Academy as a student, you get recruited, and then so you get hired, and then you got to go through this EPMA instructor course, which is great, but it's just the basics. And then it's kind of like basic instructor course. I mean, it's better than that, in the fact that they get into more affective learning and all kinds of stuff. But um, then you have to sit behind an instructor and watch them teach a course, right? Every lesson, 8 hours a day for 6 weeks. It's a lot of information. The very next class you're teaching, you get feedback on every 45 minutes. I remember my very first lesson, right? I had prepared for that lesson probably. I don't know why people do this, but your very first lesson, you probably put like 20 hours into that 1 hour, right? Because you're like, I gotta hit this, I gotta hit this. And I turned around and looked at these like 16 successful senior NCOs staring at me, and I went completely blank. I just went completely blank. And so I read through my introduction and everything like that, and I started going through
Yes, this is Josh.
It wasn't like that. It was just like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to do this? Because DJ, my instructor trainer, he was back there like critiquing. I could see him like writing down to like, what's he doing? And like, it's kind of heart racing. But I I would ask a question, someone would answer it, and I'd be like, great, move on. And I'd ask the very next question, someone to answer it. No, I wouldn't elicit any kind of discussion or like, hey, Kyle, what do you think about this? Like, I have all these skills now. I went through like 2.5, three hours worth of lesson material in 16 minutes. And after the 16 minutes, I was like, okay, we're going to take a break because I didn't know what to do. And DJ pulled me in the back. He's like, what are you doing, man? Like, you're going to have to go and redo all of that. You have got to. You went through 3 hours, 3 lessons in 16 minutes. They didn't discuss anything. I was like, well, I asked every question. He's like, did you go to instructor course? Like, how come you didn't ask? Hey, can you clarify that? Hey, what do you mean by that? Can you go a little deeper? All these kind of like just instructor things, and it was just, anyways. But for the next 6 weeks, I got a 45-minute feedback every after every session. I got a feedback, and it's just humbling because I don't know if I got a good word for 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just it's motivating and demotivating at the same time. But it was the real. You suck. You suck. You suck. You suck. You suck. Not as sucky, but still sucky. Like that's about how it went. And DJ was a maintainer, so I didn't get an inch from him. So, but
Good.
yeah, good. I am the man I am today because of you, DJ Sternard. And
Good game, TJ.
DJ, he was the pro super at Charleston. Yeah, at Charleston when that one avionics guy got stuck in the flap. Yeah, he told me that story.
See, I've seen that on safety videos.
Yeah, it became the like Air Force safety video, just about not communicating.
Yeah, that's brutal. So, shout out to DJ and for you going to Senior NCO Academy.
Yeah, it was a great tour. I loved it. I loved probably my second, like my tied for second and third is probably like Kunsan and DM. I really enjoyed those. But you know what? I really had a good time as a command chief too. Like up there at Eielson, like I had such a huge impact with a lot of people, and people still reach out. I was just talking with a chief. He was a senior at the time yesterday. Oh, Chief Master Sergeant Paul Hammer. He's a POL guy, and it was funny because he sent me. He's now a new. Congratulations, Paul Hammer. He's a squadron superintendent up at Dias, and he went by PA and got his new, his new chief picture that he's going to put up. And anyways, he had him do an extra one, and his name's Paul Hammer. So he had 2 little crossed hammers. I'm like, all right. So if I ever need the hammer, I need a verdict. I'll call you, Paul. He's the Texas Hammer now.
Texas Hammer.
Those crappy CGI commercials. So, but yeah, I loved being a command chief. It was good. The Pentagon was an experience. I've never heard anyone say they loved the Pentagon. They always say it was a good experience, but I've never heard them say like, man, that was it. That was the ticket. So
Yeah, I was never selected to go into that higher echelon of leadership. I didn't pursue it, um, but I was happy at that more tactical level
yeah,
in the AMU. That fit my personality, and I feel like I did the most good there. You know what? I have to say that because that's the only thing that I did. But
no,
I was
no
I was
regrets.
stoked. Yeah, no regrets. It was epic. Um, I was called. You ever heard the term "nonner"? Like
Yeah,
someone using the term "nonner" to describe someone outside of an operational impact career field.
it's a
So they would call them.
derogatory term for anyone that doesn't know.
Yep. So if they don't do anything to like do with planes or things like that, people would call them nonners. And it was the first time when I was a chief, I didn't know that there was a term like that for chiefs. I was called a slick sleeve chief by a NAF chief,
A slick
and
sleeve chief. I don't know if I've ever heard that.
she was like, "I've never been a slick sleeve chief, so I don't really know what you guys get into when
Oh,
you're."
you mean she was either a first sergeant and then went
She
straight to a
was.
command chief. Okay.
That's correct. So she was a first sergeant, and then she went to command chief. So she never
And that was a sense of
was.
pride for her, obviously.
Yes, and so she was speaking to a room full of new chiefs who were all slick sleeve chiefs. Maybe there was a couple first sergeants thrown in there, and she goes like, "Oh, it's a term of endearment, like you guys calling us nonners." And I remember there was one guy who was kind of specifically heated about that and didn't like being called, knowing that there was a derogatory term for just a run of the mill chief. And by God, he let his voice be heard.
It's funny, like ego is our downfall, right? Like battle your ego. I was talking with a friend this week about this. Like the older I get, the more critical I am about information because it's like everything going on with Ukraine, right? Like I don't know what's going on. It's like I see videos and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like one day later, oh, this was a video game, or this was back in 2012, or you know what I mean? Like you
Goes to Kiev.
yeah, Ghost of Kiev. Like you can't tell. Like it's funny. Like we're living in the world where there's a war being fought on social media, but we literally I can't tell you what the hell is going on, even though we have more information than we ever would have in any time in history. And I was telling him, I'm like, I can't wait till I'm sitting on my patio and I'm watching my garden grow because I know for a fact what's going on in my garden. I can know for a fact what's going on there. But what's going on with the rest of the world? No idea. Zero clue. So it's just, man, you know, I don't, we're coming towards the end, the last part of it, but it makes me laugh because like the world is changing so much, so fast, and the term for leader like has changed. Just in my mind, has changed. I don't know, 10 times in the last 3 years. It is such a different skill set out there to be a leader today. And someone's like, why? Like being an age maintainer hasn't really changed. And I'm like, well, they're still delivering age, but you know what's different in the world with social media is that age maintainer, an airman basic or whatever, can become a strategic airman with one tweet. Like literally can change the course of lots of things. It's like people with their military IDs going into the Capitol on the 6th. Like, I'm just saying, like, it, with the way information is communicated today, like anyone can do that. And so the power of that has changed what leadership is. So it's a different world, and you have to think of it a different way. So it's exciting. Like I'm in that kind of realm at Rice with leadership development, but just thinking back to even 5 years ago when we were doing this in the Air Force, it has completely changed, and I'm so happy for the experience. But it's going to get harder. It's going to get harder.
Yeah, you thought when you were there that you were, you did everything you did was in kind of like a glass house, right?
Hmm.
Everything that you did was scrutinized and observed, and you thought it was like that 5 years ago. Just imagine, the level as we kind of like go through, and there's a camera everywhere, and kind of encouraged. Um, how different the world, will be. And do you become a little? You said it earlier, faking, lying, and something
Hiding,
else.
lying, or LHFing, lying, hiding, faking.
So imagine if you aren't that great of a leader and you're having, multiple consecutive just bad days, and you revert to that kind of behavior, and that's just captured. And then, what if it just starts to snowball on you? It's just one of those things that's kind of.
Well, you'll just get called out now more. Like
Oh yeah,
when we were
for
airmen, like
sure.
if you had a bad supervisor, like you might talk to your bro about it, but like you definitely didn't get on Reddit and be like, "Hey, does anyone else have a supervisor like this?" And like people are like, "That's terrible. Like, what is this person?" And like next thing you know, you're in the legal office because
Oh yeah.
yeah, I'm just saying like which is good, right? Like it's like police, cameras and everything like that, but Um, cameras don't always tell the whole story though, so that's what's tough about it, right? Like you think you know the whole story, but it's tough. It is so nuanced. It's way more nuanced than leadership was tough back in the day, but it is way more nuanced than it was even, like I said, 5 years ago. And that line hiding faking is it's real, but you can't get away with it as long anymore. Like maybe these billionaire toxic leaders can, just because they have lots of money. But for General Joe schmoes like us, we get busy becoming a good leader or get out, because there's no in between, and it's tough. So, well, I do have our fallen, and then maybe we can recapture our some takeaways from this, because we do want to be. I didn't say this last time, but we do want to be value added to our listener, and hopefully there was a couple deep cuts that you picked up. But we'll try to maybe do a quick summary. But before we get to that, this is one of the coolest ones, because I knew this guy personally. And on 21 March 2015, the former Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Jim Binnicker, passed away. And he would come to the Senior and CO Academy when I was there all the time to speak. And yeah, I, did did you have a story or anything about him?
No, I was able to see him speak. I'm stoked that we're doing Binnaker.
Yeah, he was phenomenal, and I'll just tell you on the real, he was phenomenal. So like he would go out to dinner with us, and he was a wisecracking. Like he wouldn't let you get away with anything. He was like your uncle that would call you out on everything that you said, right? Like, but would joke about it and have a good time, and he was just a really good guy. Anyways, he helped start the enlisted village down there in Florida. And so, as a senior in SEAL Academy, some of the instructors would, make a yearly trip to go down there to help. A lot of bases around the enlisted village do that, because it's ran for the widows and uh, spouses, dependents of Air Force people, and it's a really cool. Look it up. Well, I'll put a link to it in the comments. But the enlisted village is awesome, and he was the president of it for a long time, and it was so my friend who is skeptical about everything, but he's a good dude. We were there like doing something with some lawn, and some of the old ladies brought us out some lemonade, and we were sitting there drinking it and talking with them, and he leaned over to one of the ladies, and he's like, "How often?" Because Chief Binnicker said he loved the enlisted village and he was always out. So my friend asked this lady, like, "How often you see Chief Binnicker? How many times, a month you see him?" She's like, "Every day. Every day he walks around and talks to us." And I already like the guy, right? But from the second-hand account, he was that kind of leader by example, but he backed up what he said. She said every day without a hesitation, he walked around and talked to all those people. So uh, phenomenal guy, just a phenomenal chief. And, we lost him 7 years ago, almost to the day. And so wanted to remember him. And yeah, so we'll continue to do that little tradition. So what do you got? What would you take away from this, or what kind of hashtags do we got for this, Kyle?
Definitely hashtag Binnaker. What an awesome guy. I laughed so hard in the few times that I got to speak with him um, personally, and that was cool. He would not let you get away with anything. I can only imagine the kind of stories and stuff that when nobody was watching was coming out of that Air Force enlisted village. I'm sure he was giving giving those ladies a hard time.
Yeah.
No pun intended. So he's just a phenomenal human being. Let's see, my deep cuts. I found out today that the techniques you learned in your fancy EPME instructor course are what you Jedi mind trick me into talking about. Like, oh, tell me more. Can you please elaborate? And so I'm sitting here jabbering on because of your skill as an instructor. So shout out Air Force Enlisted PME Instructor Course, hashtag Senior NCO Academy.
Yeah. So let's see. I love going over bases. I will say this, like if you didn't pick this up, that's May May attacking her kennel. Just a sec. May May. So that's my pug. Yeah, I snapped at her, and that probably I'll hold her back for about 10 seconds. If you didn't pick up, like wherever you're stationed, like find the good things that you have. That bloom where you're planted. Find if you're a city kid from New York that joined the Air Force and you got sent to Minot, figure out how to hike and hunt and fish. It's the way it is. You're there. You only get so much life. You can't buy time back. You can buy a lot of other things, but you can't buy time. And so,
these are your good old days.
yeah. And so make the most out of every assignment that you got. We listed some of our best ones. I mean, even our worst ones, we can find the good things that we took away from it, or the time that we wasted. And that whole, no regrets. I regret a lot of a time that I wasted wallowing or being pitiful of being stationed here, because that was my first tour in Korea. I was sad to be there because I was an engaged person when I got my orders, and I was pissed at the Air Force, and I had a bad time that year. I go back in 2015, and I decided I wanted to have a good time, and I did. And it was just my mindset. That's the only thing that changed. So, anyways, that's a few of the deep cuts. You probably picked up other ones, and yeah, like I said, we want to be value added, and we love being here for you. I think we're going to start publishing these ones on actually Spotify and all that kind of stuff. So look for that. Whoever, Brooke Fremo, the one and only listener. So, all right, I'll play us out here, Kyle. Let's turn up the volume. Oh, there it is.